I know how to do
Okay,
that.
gotcha.
Hello, my name is David Weitman, and I am here interviewing my grandfather. Could you tell your name and your rank?
My name is George Kerstetter, and I was in World War II. I was in there about 3 years, and I'm trying to help David with tell him how things were like in the time I was in the service. Okay.
All right. First question is, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted. Yes.
And what age were you drafted?
I was 30 years old.
And is there a reason behind that, or
What?
is there a reason behind that? That you were drafted at 30 rather than...
No.
Okay.
They took the younger men in first, but this war kept going and they needed more men, so they upped the age, and that's why I was drafted when I was 30 years old. But the younger ones went in first, and so they needed more men, so they had to call the older men. Okay?
Mm-hmm. What branch of service did you serve in?
The Marine Corps.
Okay. And did you have a choice between the Marines or the Army, or were you just told?
When we went to Harrisburg to have our first examination, they had a choice. They asked me what I would prefer. I said I would like to go into the Navy. He said we have our quota filled for the Navy at the time being, and we need a few good men for the Marine Corps. So he said, how about you being a Marine? I said, okay, well, that's how I got to be a Marine.
Okay. Where did you get your basic training?
Basic training I got at Parris Island, South Carolina.
And could you tell me, like, what the living conditions were and what are the different things you learned?
Well, the training was rough. Everybody will tell you that. We had our training was like learning how to use the M1 rifle and shooting. We had to go out on the rifle range to shoot the M1 and get acquainted with it and keep it cleaned and all that. So that was one thing that we had to do.
Did you have any jobs or anything while you were at the training site?
Jobs, well, not really. I mean, I was just one of the guys, you know.
Where were you sent after basic training?
At Parris Island, we lived mostly in tents, and it was cold weather. The weather was cold, and we had to be out in the rain. Our clothes got soaked, but that didn't mean anything. It was pretty cold at that time, so we slept with our clothing on, and it was so cold in the morning that our clothing were frozen on us. But then, that's how it was.
Alright. Where were you sent after the basic training?
After basic training, I was sent to Camp Pendleton for advanced training. There we learned to different things, you know, different guns, you know, and what to do if we get to be a prisoner. You only tell them the only thing you would tell the only thing you would tell the enemy would be your rank, name, and serial number. That's all. No information whatsoever. So that's how that worked.
Oh, what was your duty? What was your duty?
My duty?
Yeah.
No, that was at Paris Island.
Yeah.
We're still at Paris Island, yeah. Well, we had a lot of training, you know, in different things. We had a manual to study, and a lot of things we had to memorize, and we really tried to do our best to memorize the most important things, and that we didn't know exactly what it was all about, but that was get you prepared for like a PFC, and that included one stripe, and now that most everything went by alphabetical order. Well, I was pretty lucky with that because mine started with a K, and that way I could find out from the others that were ahead of me. I could learn a lot what to expect when I get called in. Well, first man that went in, he came out. I guess they threw the sergeant. I think they threw him out because he came flying out of the tent. And well, everybody asked, "What do they do in there?" Well, he said they want to know what you. They asked questions on what they had in your manual, things that you had to memorize, and that way I got a little information what to expect when I get in there, and I tried to remember how things were taught, you know, and when my turn came, I went in and I stood at attention. And I said, "This is PFC, the Private George Kerstetter, reporting reporting for what I'm not sure. As reporting as directed, and then I snapped to attention, and it stood there. He said, "At ease," so I was at ease, and he asked me a couple questions on things that we had learned, and I could answer almost all of them, and he said, "Okay, you're dismissed." I said, I was all at ease, you know, and turned around like we were taught to do, and went out and made a pretty good impression on the sergeant, and that's how I got that. It was a test to see if you qualify for PFC, and I qualified. Well, not many of them did, but at least I had a red stripe when I came home on furlough. I was real proud of that. Yes.
What did you and the other soldiers do in your spare time?
Well, different things. Now later on, we're getting pretty far ahead now, but we would go to every 6 weeks we would get a 3-day pass, and that was when I was in San Diego, and we'd go up to Los Angeles and Hollywood. But you know what? At that time, things were rationed. You couldn't, so many things that civilians couldn't buy, like cigarettes, and if people would do almost anything just to get cigarettes. So when I wanted to go up to, say, Los Angeles, I would go to the PX, and at that time, at the PX, you could buy cigarettes for 35 cents for a carton. There was 10 packs in a carton, so I would buy a carton of cigarettes for 35 cents, and I would go out to the main highway, and then I would wave this pack of cigarettes, and the car would stop right away and say, "Where are you going?" I said, "Los Angeles." And that's about 100 miles. And he said, "Hop in." And he took me all the way to Los Angeles for a carton of cigarettes. Yeah.
What certain skills did you learn in the Marines?
What skills?
Yeah.
Well, we learned a lot about basic training and calisthenics and everything about the M1 rifle and some of the more advanced weapons, and then I was sent to Camp Pendleton, and there we studied like flamethrowers and bigger guns, you know, and all that. And that's where I got my advanced training. Well, then, after we had that advanced training, I was transferred down to the Marine base at San Diego, and that was a very nice place. And I was waiting for my next reporting, and they needed an instructor, and they called me in and wanted to know what I could do, and I passed that all right. And at that time, what should have been instructor, the sergeants and all that, they were overseas already, so they took me as one.
When you were in the Marines, did you hear any news about the war that was going on? And if so, what did you find out?
Well, like I said, when we were in basic training and advanced training, we didn't know anything about what's going on in the war. But later on, then they reported it at the theater. They give a report on how many were taken prisoner, how many were killed, and so on. And so that's about the only news we got about the war. Yeah.
Did you find out the casualties at all?
Yeah, they explained all that, how many casualties, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was your emotions when you heard about the casualties?
Well, that's what it was. There's nothing we could do about it.
Yeah. Did you write a lot of letters to your wife when you were in the Marines?
Oh yes, I would write my wife almost every day. And at that time, anybody that had a military address did not pay any postage. Now we would actually put a stamp on the envelope. You would put on there FREE, free. We didn't pay any postage. No matter how often we wrote, you didn't pay any postage. That was free. Yes. So I wrote most always every day, and most every day I would get a letter from her. Yeah.
Could you tell me about the civil rationing coupons?
Yeah, the rationing, most everything was rationed now, like tea, tea and coffee and sugar and flour. That was all rationed. You had to have stamps to buy that. And you had to get that from the ration board. And there was the closest one was Elizabethville. so she had to go up there to get her stamps. Yeah.
Did you ever go overseas, and were you in the war at all?
If I was ever overseas, no, I was not. I was scheduled twice to go. I had everything packed, and they called me back. And then that's when they had me as an instructor, and they needed me, and they called me back. Twice that I was all packed and ready to go, but I never did go overseas.
I see. Were you still in California when the war ended?
Yes, but I still had to serve 6 months, and I was a corporal. That's the next thing to a sergeant. But when I was eligible to be a sergeant, but after the war was over, there were no more promotions, so I never did get to be a sergeant, but I was up for sergeant, and so I still had to serve 6 months. So those 6 months, I was transferred out to the base gardens. Now, the Marine base at San Diego was a very pretty place. It had lots of shrubbery and trees and all kinds of plants and stuff. It was a very pretty base. And then they had the base gardens, so they sent me out there, and I said, "You're in charge of the base gardens, and we'll tell you what we want to have done, and you don't do any work, but you go down to the recruit depot with the truck, and you get as many men as you need, and then you come back and you tell them, now this is what we're going to do, and he said, you don't do anything but see that the work gets done right." So that was my best, the best duty that I had in all the time I was in the service.
After you were done in the Marines and serving, what was life like when you came home?
Well, they didn't want me to leave. The old, I think he was I don't know if he's a lieutenant or what, he was an older man. He said, "Can I talk you into staying and re-enlisting?" I said, "Well, I'll tell you how it is." I said, "I have a wife and a baby at home, and I would like to go home." "Well," he said, "that's up to you, but he said, we'd like to have you if you think you could stay." But I said, "No, I don't, I think I'll go home." Well, when I got home, I made the biggest mistake I guess I should have, that I ever did. I went back to my old job in the shoe factory, which didn't pay much, and what I should have done was use it, see, we got a mustering out pay, a couple $100, and I should have taken that and got some more education. That would have done me a lot more good than going back with a little bit of money that I earned in the shoe factory. So that was a big mistake.
Well, thank you very, very much for sharing your experience and everything that you went through.
Oh, you're perfectly welcome, but there's so many things I've forgotten, and but I tried to help you as best I could, and I hope it'll be some help for you.
Thank you.